What if the thing saving you from burnout isn't meditation, therapy, or vacation, but something your society taught you to dismiss as a complete waste of time? What if your salvation lies not in doing more, but in doing what the world calls useless? You live in a world obsessed with productivity. Every moment must generate value. Every hobby must have a purpose. Even your rest has become optimized. But here's the paradox. The more productive you become, the emptier you feel. The more you achieve, the more exhausted you are. You're not resting, you're refueling to produce more. Look around. Everyone is exhausted. Not the exhaustion of hard labor, but something more insidious, a neuronal violence, a psychic fatigue that no vacation can cure, no weekend can heal. You wake up tired. You go to bed tired. And somewhere between those two tiredness, you call it living. Here's what happened. Society evolved. The old disciplinary world, with its guards and walls and external oppressors, that world is gone. You celebrated. You called it freedom, but freedom turned into something else entirely. You became your own slave driver, your own prison guard, your own relentless taskmaster. This is what the philosopher Byung-Chul Han calls the performance society. A world where you're not forced to produce, you want to produce. You're not ordered to optimize, you voluntarily track every metric of your existence. Sleep quality, step count, productivity score, calorie intake, screen time. You measure everything except the one thing that matters. Are you actually living? The performance society is brilliant in its cruelty. It doesn't need chains. It offers you freedom and then convinces you that freedom means endless self-optimization. It whispers, you can be anything you want, and then adds the poisonous second half. So why aren't you more? Every app on your phone promises to make you better. Faster, smarter, more efficient, more present. Even mindfulness, the ancient practice of simply being, has been weaponized into productivity technology. You meditate not to experience existence, but to perform better at work. You exercise not for the joy of movement, but to optimize your body as an instrument of production. Here's the violence. In the old disciplinary society, you could identify the enemy, the boss, the system, the oppressor. You could resist. You could rebel. But in the performance society, the oppressor is you. How do you rebel against yourself? How do you strike against your own ambition? You can't, so you burn out instead. Burnout isn't a personal failure. It's not because you're weak or lack resilience. Burnout is the signature disease of a society that has convinced you that your worth equals your output, that rest is laziness, that doing nothing is dying. The performance society has colonized every aspect of your existence. Your work, obviously, but also your relationships, which you invest in and maintain, your health, which you optimize, your leisure, which must be productive or at least Instagram worthy. Even your suffering must have a purpose, must lead to growth, must produce a better version of you. You're not allowed to simply be sad. You must be processing. You're not allowed to simply rest. You must be recovering. You're not allowed to simply exist. You must be becoming. Everything must serve a purpose. Everything must be useful. And here's where the tyranny reveals itself. What happens to everything that isn't useful? Your grandmother's habit of sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, useless. The teenager who spends hours arranging flowers, unproductive. The man who builds model ships, he'll never sail, wasteful. The woman who tends a garden that produces less food than the grocery store, inefficient. The performance society looks at these activities and sees failure, sees wasted time, sees potential productivity lost. It calculates the opportunity cost of doing nothing and finds it unacceptable. But here's what the performance society cannot see. These useless activities might be the only thing keeping these people sane. The only moments where they're not performing, not producing, not optimizing, just being. You feel this, don't you? The guilt when you do something that serves no purpose. When you read fiction that won't help your career. When you take a walk that isn't exercise. When you cook elaborately for no one. When you play an instrument badly with no intention to improve. When you simply sit and watch the light change through the window. The tyranny of the useful has taught you to feel guilty about the very activities that make you human. Because here's what Byung-Chul Han understands. Usefulness is not a natural category, it's an economic one. When everything must be useful, useful really means profitable or productive or optimizable. It means, can this be extracted? Can this generate value? Can this be measured? And if it can't, if it exists purely for its own sake, if it serves no purpose beyond the joy or meaning or beauty it creates in the moment, then the performance society has no use for it, has no language for it, has no space for it. So it calls it useless. And you, good citizen of the performance society, internalize that judgment. You look at the things you love, the things that bring you joy precisely because they serve no purpose, and you feel ashamed. You're a high-functioning prisoner. Your cell is comfortable. Your chains are invisible. Your guard is the voice in your head that never stops asking, is this productive? Is this useful? Is this the best use of my time? The tyranny of the useful has won when you can no longer imagine doing something for no reason at all. Let's talk about what you've lost. Not your keys or your phone or your mind though, those two, probably. Let's talk about something more fundamental, something you didn't even know was possible to lose. The ability to do nothing. No, not scrolling, not watching, not consuming content, not chilling while your mind spins with anxiety about tomorrow's tasks. Real nothing, active inactivity, purposeful purposelessness, the art of existing without agenda. When was the last time you were genuinely bored? Not the frustrated waiting for something, boredom. The deep, spacious, almost meditative boredom where time expands and your mind is free to wander wherever it wants without destination or deadline. Can't remember? You're not alone. Boredom has been eradicated from modern life as efficiently as smallpox. Every waiting room has a screen. Every commute has a podcast. Every moment of potential emptiness gets filled with content, notifications, optimizations. You've been taught that boredom is the enemy. That empty time is wasted time, that a wandering mind is a failing mind. So you fill every gap. You optimize every minute. You consume content even while consuming food, while consuming other content. But here's what Byung-Chul Han reveals. Inactivity is not the absence of activity. It's not merely the gap between productive moments. Inactivity is a distinct faculty, a human capacity, a way of being that modern society has systematically exiled from acceptable existence. Think about how you use language. You don't say, I'm being inactive. You say, I'm doing nothing, as if nothing were something you do, some task you perform. Even your language for inactivity has been colonized by the logic of activity. But true inactivity doesn't do anything, it simply is. And that's precisely what makes it dangerous to a society organized around doing, producing, performing. Consider this. You take time off work. You call it vacation. You feel virtuous about prioritizing self-care. But watch what you do. You plan activities. You schedule relaxation. You optimize your rest. You ensure every moment of your vacation generates memories, experiences, Instagram content. You return from vacation exhausted, needing a vacation from your vacation. This isn't rest. This is the continuation of performance by other means. You're not inactive. You're engaged in the active production of leisure. Even your rest has become work. Han calls this the transformation of rest into recovery. Rest is no longer valuable in itself. It's valuable only as recovery time to prepare you for more work. You sleep not because sleep is a beautiful surrender to unconsciousness, but because sleep optimizes your next day's performance. You exercise not for the joy of movement, but to maintain the body as an instrument of production. Everything that was once an end in itself has been reduced to a means to productivity. The exile of inactivity goes deeper than you think. It's not just about your schedule. It's about your nervous system, your brain, your very capacity to tolerate emptiness. What happens when you try to do nothing? Your mind rebels. Anxiety rises, the checklist appears, the guilt emerges. You reach for your phone not because you want something specific, but because the emptiness feels unbearable. The performance society has rewired your neural pathways. You've become addicted to stimulation, to notification, to the constant ping of validation and demand and distraction. Silence feels like death. Emptiness feels like failure. But here's the tragedy. Everything valuable about being human happens in that space of inactivity. Creativity doesn't come from grinding. Insight doesn't come from optimization. Wisdom doesn't come from productivity. They emerge from the spaciousness of an inactive mind, from wandering, from wondering, from the contemplative capacity that you've exiled in favor of constant doing. The greatest ideas don't come when you're working. They come in the shower, on walks, in moments of distraction. When your mind is free to make unexpected connections, to see patterns, to discover meanings that no amount of focused effort could produce. But you can't schedule those moments. You can't optimize for insight. You can't productivity hack your way to wisdom. These gifts only arrive when you stop trying. When you surrender to an activity, think about children. How they play, not purposefully. Not to develop skills or achieve milestones. They play for the sake of playing. They're bored and create worlds. They do things that serve absolutely no purpose except the joy of doing them. And then we educate that out of them. We teach them that play must be educational. That free time must be structured. That doing nothing is wasting potential. We transform children into little performance subjects, anxious and exhausted before they're even teenagers. The exile of inactivity is not just personal, it's civilizational. An entire way of being human has been systematically eliminated from acceptable life, the contemplative life, the philosophical life, the life organized around being rather than doing. Ancient wisdom from Buddhism to Stoicism to Christianity understood something modern society has forgotten. The highest human activity is actually inactivity, contemplation, meditation, prayer. These aren't preparations for action. They are the action. They're not means to something else. They're ends in themselves. But the performance society cannot tolerate ends in themselves. Everything must serve a purpose beyond itself. Everything must produce. Everything must perform. So inactivity gets exiled, and you get exhausted. Here's the question that might change everything. What if your exhaustion isn't because you're doing too much? What if it's because you're being too little? What if the problem isn't that you need better time management, but that you need inactivity? Not as recovery, not as optimization, not as a means to better performance, but as a fundamental way of being human that you've been taught to feel guilty about. The exile is almost complete, but not quite. Because you still feel it, don't you? That pull toward the useless. That longing to just sit and watch the light. That strange peace you feel doing something that serves no purpose. That's not laziness. That's your humanity desperately trying to survive in a world designed to extinguish it. What do you think about this? Does the exile of inactivity resonate with your experience? Have you felt the guilt of doing nothing or lost the capacity to simply be? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your reflection might help someone else understand their own exhaustion. Stay with me, because what comes next might sound insane to your productivity-poisoned mind. But it might also be the most important thing you hear all year. The things you feel guilty about, the ones society calls useless, they might be your only path to freedom. Not metaphorical freedom. Not the fake freedom the performance society sells you. Real freedom. The kind that actually lets you breathe. But first, let me thank you. Truly, deeply thank you for staying with this exploration until now. In a world of infinite scroll and instant gratification, the fact that you're here, thinking, questioning, confronting uncomfortable truths, that means something. It means you haven't completely surrendered to the performance logic. And I promise you, the most radical ideas are still ahead. Let's examine something strange. You have activities in your life that bring you profound joy, but you hide them. You apologize for them. You justify them as if they were crimes requiring defense. Why do you love gardening? Well, it's good exercise, and fresh vegetables save money, and studies show that being outside reduces stress. Why can't you just say, because I love watching things grow? Because dirt under my fingernails makes me feel alive. Because there's something sacred about participating in life's emergence. Why do you paint? It helps me relax after work, and creativity is good for cognitive function. And why not? Because color and form and the act of creation for no reason other than beauty itself is what makes me feel human. Why do you read fiction? Why do you play music badly? Why do you cook elaborate meals? Why do you walk without destination? And why, when asked, do you scramble to justify these things with their useful byproducts instead of their useless essence? Because the performance society has taught you that nothing is allowed to exist for its own sake. Everything must serve. Everything must produce. Everything must justify its existence through utility. But here's where Byung-Chul Han drops a philosophical bomb that the performance society cannot diffuse. True happiness is owed to what is vain and useless, to what is admittedly impractical, unproductive. Read that again. True happiness, not contentment, not satisfaction, not the shallow pleasure of achievement. True happiness comes from the useless. This isn't romanticizing laziness. This is identifying the last space where you're not performing, where you're not producing, where you're not being extracted from, where you simply are engaged in activity for the sheer radiance of the activity itself. Useless things possess radical power precisely because they exist outside the logic of capitalism. They can't be optimized. They can't be monetized. They can't be measured. They resist the fundamental operation of the performance society, extraction of value. When you paint a picture for no one, that painting has no exchange value. It's not an investment. It's not content. It's not building your brand. It exists in pure use value, the joy you experienced creating it. And that makes it dangerous. The performance society panics when confronted with use value without exchange value. It doesn't compute. It tries to colonize these spaces. Turn your hobby into a side hustle. Monetize your passion. Build your personal brand. Notice what happens. The moment your useless hobby becomes useful, becomes monetizable, the joy evaporates. The painting you loved creating becomes content you need to post. The music you played for pleasure becomes a skill you must market. The writing you did for yourself becomes copy you must optimize. The performance society captures another space of freedom and converts it into productive labor, and you call it opportunity. But some things resist. Some activities remain stubbornly, beautifully, radically useless, and these are your salvation. Consider the Japanese practice of kintsugi, repairing broken pottery with gold, making the breaks visible and beautiful. From a performance perspective, this is insane. It takes more time than buying new pottery. The gold costs more than the pot. The repaired pot is often less functional than it was, but kintsugi isn't about utility. It's about beauty, about history, about honoring the existence of things for their own sake, not for their function. It's useless. And that's exactly what makes it profound. Or think about rituals, religious ceremonies, celebrations. From a productivity standpoint, these are wasteful. Hours spent in activities that produce nothing, that could be used for work or optimization or consumption. But Han reveals something crucial. Rituals create the radiance of life. They mark time as sacred rather than merely useful. They create spaces where doing serves being, not the other way around. They're useless, and in that uselessness, they generate meaning. You've lost this. Your birthdays are optimized. Your holidays are scheduled. Your celebrations are photographed for Instagram. Even your rituals have become performances, content to be consumed rather than experiences to be lived. The radical power of useless things is that they create a space the performance society cannot touch. When you engage in true uselessness, when you do something purely for its own sake, with no thought of utility or productivity or outcome, you step outside the system. You're no longer performing. You're no longer producing. You're no longer being extracted from. You're simply being. And the system hates that. It can't measure being. It can't optimize presence. It can't monetize the sacred experience of existing for no reason other than existing. This is why your useless hobbies feel so good. Not because they're relaxing in a recovery sense, but because they're the only moments where you're not a performance subject, where you're not optimizing yourself, where you're not the entrepreneur of your own life. You're just a human, doing human things for human reasons that have nothing to do with productivity. The radical power of useless things is that they remember what you've forgotten. You are not a resource to be exploited, not even by yourself. You are not a project to be optimized, not even for your own benefit. You are not a brand to be marketed, not even in the name of self-actualization. You are an end in yourself. Your existence needs no justification. Your activities need no purpose beyond the joy or meaning or beauty they create in the moment. This is what the performance society cannot tolerate. Because if you truly believed you were an end in yourself, you'd stop performing. You'd stop optimizing. You'd stop producing. You'd start being. And an economy organized around extraction cannot function if people simply decide to be. So the system fights back. It calls your useless things a waste. It makes you feel guilty. It offers to help you monetize your passion, to turn your hobby into productivity, to extract value even from your moments of freedom. But every time you resist, every time you do something useless and refuse to justify it, you commit a small act of rebellion. You reclaim a piece of yourself from the performance society. You remember that being human is not about being useful. The useless things are not distractions from your real life. They are your real life. Everything else is the distraction. There's an ancient way of being that modern society buried so completely, you don't even have a word for it anymore. A life organized not around action, but around contemplation. Not around doing, but around being. Not around production, but around presence. The Greeks called it the contemplative life, the Vita Contemplativa, and they believed understood, really, that this was the highest form of human existence. Not the active life of politics and commerce and achievement, but the contemplative life of thought and reflection and sacred inactivity. Your society looks at that concept and laughs. The contemplative life? That sounds like unemployment with pretensions, like privilege, like laziness dressed in philosophical robes. But here's what your society doesn't understand. The contemplative life isn't about doing nothing. It's about being everything. It's not the absence of activity. It's the presence of attention. It's not withdrawal from the world. It's full engagement with existence itself. Byung-Chul Han argues that modern society has completely eliminated the contemplative dimension of life. You don't contemplate anymore. You consume. You don't reflect. You react. You don't sit with questions. You Google answers. Think about how you engage with the world. You encounter something beautiful, a sunset, a piece of music, a moment of connection. And what do? You photograph it. You caption it. You share it. You turn the experience into content before you've actually experienced it. You don't contemplate the sunset. You capture it. You don't listen to the music. You identify it with an app. You don't simply be in the moment. You perform the moment for an imagined audience. The contemplative capacity has been replaced by the active impulse to process, to capture, to share, to optimize every experience for its productive or social value. Han points to something profound. Attention itself has changed. You no longer have deep attention, the kind that can rest on something, can stay with something, can really see something. You have hyperattention, scanning, skimming, bouncing between stimuli, restless, fragmented, exhausted. Deep attention is contemplative. It lingers, it savors. It allows meaning to emerge slowly. But deep attention is incompatible with productivity. It's too slow, too inefficient, too useless. So the performance society trained you in hyperattention. Quick scans, rapid processing, immediate reaction. This is more productive, more responsive, more aligned with the demands of constant performance. But hyperattention cannot contemplate, cannot sit with complexity, cannot tolerate ambiguity, cannot access the deeper dimensions of meaning that only reveal themselves to patient attention. You've lost the capacity for contemplation, and with it, you've lost access to the aspects of existence that make being human worthwhile. Consider reading. How do you read now? Scanning for key points, looking for takeaways, searching for actionable insights, reading to learn, to improve, to optimize. Reading as work. But contemplative reading is different. It's slow. It savors sentences. It lets ideas wash over you without immediate judgment. It doesn't ask, how can I use this? It asks, what does this reveal about existence? You've almost completely lost this. Even your leisure has become productive. You read to get smarter. You watch films to understand culture. You listen to podcasts to stay informed. Everything serves some purpose beyond itself. But the contemplative life recognizes that not everything must serve. That sometimes, maybe even most times, the point is simply to be present to whatever is, not to use it, not to extract from it, not to turn it into content or knowledge or optimization, just to be with it. Han talks about rituals and festivals as expressions of the contemplative life. These are activities that serve no productive purpose. They don't make anything. They don't achieve goals. They simply celebrate existence. They mark time as sacred rather than useful. Your society has almost completely eliminated these spaces. Your holidays are optimized. Your celebrations are scheduled around work demands. Your rituals have become performances content for social media rather than experiences of sacred presence. Even religion, the traditional home of the contemplative life, has been infected by the performance logic. Churches advertise their services like businesses. Spirituality gets measured in attendance and engagement metrics. Prayer becomes a productivity tool for better mental health outcomes. The contemplative dimension gets eliminated even from spaces explicitly designed to preserve it. Here's what you've lost: the ability to celebrate. Not to party, you still know how to consume entertainment, but to celebrate, to mark time as sacred, to pause the productive forward motion of life and simply honor existence itself. Celebration requires inactivity, requires uselessness, requires time set apart from the logic of production and consumption, requires presence without purpose. And you can barely tolerate it anymore. At celebrations, you're checking your phone, thinking about tomorrow, planning your next move. Even in moments explicitly designed for presence, you're absent, pulled into the future by anxiety and the endless demands of performance. Han argues that life receives its radiance only from inactivity, not from achievement, not from productivity, not from optimized experiences or Instagram-worthy moments, but from the contemplative capacity to simply be present to existence itself. That radiance, that quality that makes life feel meaningful, beautiful, worth living, it only emerges when you stop performing. When you step out of the active mode of constant doing and enter the contemplative mode of being. You know this feeling, even if you can't name it. Those rare moments when you're not trying to do anything, not working toward any goal, not optimizing any outcome. You're just sitting on the porch as evening comes, just listening to rain, just watching a child play, just being with someone you love without agenda or purpose. In those moments, something shifts. The frantic energy settles, time expands, presence arrives, and you think, this is what it's about. Not the achievements or the productivity or the optimized life. This simple, useless, beautiful presence. That's the contemplative life, and you've been taught to feel guilty about it. The Vita Contemplativa is not about rejecting action. It's not about abandoning the world or refusing to engage or becoming passive. It's about recognizing that action without contemplation becomes empty, that doing without being becomes exhausting, that productivity without presence becomes meaningless. Ancient wisdom understood this. The contemplative life and the active life were meant to balance each other. Action flowed from contemplation, doing served being. Productivity emerged from presence, but modern society has completely inverted this. Now being serves doing, contemplation serves productivity. Presence becomes a tool for better performance. Everything is backwards. And you're exhausted because you're trying to run entirely on action without the contemplative ground that gives action meaning. Han calls for a Vita Composita, a composite life that harmonizes action and inactivity, doing and being, productivity and contemplation. Not rejecting one for the other, but recognizing that both are essential to human flourishing. But here's the hard truth. The performance society will never give you permission to live contemplatively. It can't. Its entire logic depends on you performing, producing, optimizing. If you wait for permission to contemplate, you'll wait forever. You have to claim it, not as indulgence, not as luxury, but as the essential human capacity that makes everything else worthwhile. The contemplative life is not the absence of life. It is life itself, finally experienced rather than merely performed. So here we are. 5 explorations deep into ideas that probably make you uncomfortable. Ideas that threaten the entire edifice you've built your life upon. Ideas that suggest your exhaustion isn't a personal failure, but a systemic outcome. That your guilt about useless things is manufactured. That your salvation might lie in precisely what you've been taught to despise. The question is, now what? You understand the problem now. The performance society, the exile of inactivity, the tyranny of the useful, the loss of contemplation. You see how the system works, how it's colonized your very nervous system, how it's turned you into your own oppressor. Understanding is important, but it's not enough. Because tomorrow morning, you're going to wake up to the same demands, the same expectations, the same productive anxiety. And all this philosophy will feel like another useless thing you consumed and didn't act upon. So let's talk practically. Not about revolution, that's just performance by other means. About small rebellions. About reclaiming spaces of uselessness in a world that demands total utility. Your useless hobby, the one that makes you feel guilty, the one you hide, the one you can never quite justify, that's not your problem. That's your lifeline. That's the thing keeping you human in a world that wants you to be a machine. Maybe it's gardening, not urban farming or sustainable food production. Just getting your hands in dirt because something about the smell of soil and the patience of growth settles your nervous system in ways no meditation app ever could. Maybe it's woodworking, making things with your hands that you don't need, that aren't optimized, that serve no purpose except the satisfaction of seeing form emerge from material. Maybe it's playing an instrument badly, not practicing to improve, not working toward performance, just making sound for the pure pleasure of making sound. Maybe it's cooking elaborate meals for no one, or reading poetry that you don't get, or walking in circles around your neighborhood, or sitting in your car in the driveway for 10 minutes before going inside. Whatever it is, that useless thing, it's not a waste of time. It's the only time that isn't wasted. Because it's the only time you're not performing, not producing, not being extracted from, just being. Here's the hard part. You have to stop apologizing for it. Stop justifying it. Stop turning it into productivity. When someone asks why you garden, don't say, it's good exercise. Say, because I like it. When they push, but what's it for? Say nothing. That's why I like it. This will make people uncomfortable. The performance society has taught everyone to demand justification for activity. Uselessness threatens the whole system. People will think you're lazy or privileged or wasting your potential. Let them think that. Their discomfort is their problem, not yours. Your salvation is not about becoming less productive. It's about creating spaces where productivity is not the measure of worth, where you can exist without justification, where being is enough. This doesn't mean quitting your job or abandoning responsibility. The Vita composita that Han talks about, the composite life, it's not about rejecting action for contemplation. It's about recognizing that you need both. That action without contemplation becomes empty. That productivity without presence becomes exhausting. You need boundaries, real ones. Not work-life balance. That's just performance society language for managing your recovery time so you can produce more. Real boundaries where work ends and life begins. Where productivity stops and being starts. This means radical things. Leaving work at work, turning off notifications. Having evenings and weekends where you do not check email, do not work, do not even think about work. Where you are genuinely unavailable for extraction. The performance society will punish you for this. You might miss opportunities. You might not get promoted as fast. You might not achieve as much. But here's the question. Achieve what exactly? More exhaustion? More emptiness? More optimization of a life you're too tired to actually live? Han argues that the greatest resistance to the performance society is not political action. It's contemplative inactivity. It's the refusal to optimize. The refusal to perform. The refusal to turn every moment into productive value. This is harder than it sounds. Your nervous system is wired for performance now. When you try to be inactive, anxiety rises. Guilt emerges. The productive voice starts listing everything you should be doing instead. You have to sit with that discomfort. Have to let the anxiety be there without immediately responding to it. Have to practice the contemplative capacity to simply be present to whatever is, including your own discomfort with presence. Start small. 5 minutes of actual inactivity. Not meditation. That's too productive, too goal-oriented. Just sitting. Looking out the window. Letting your mind wander. Being bored. It will feel unbearable at first. That's how you know you need it. Build from there. An hour a week doing something completely useless. A hobby that serves no purpose. An activity that produces nothing. Time that belongs entirely to being rather than doing. Protect this time ferociously. It's not leisure. It's not recovery. It's not preparation for more work. It's life itself. The performance society will try to colonize these spaces. Will offer to help you monetize your hobby. Will suggest ways to optimize your contemplative time. Will try to turn even your uselessness into productivity. Resist. Your salvation depends on maintaining spaces that cannot be optimized. That refuse productivity. That exist purely for their own sake. Here's what might happen. You might discover that the things you thought were essential, the constant availability, the relentless optimization, the exhausting performance, they're not. You might find that doing less actually makes your action more meaningful, that being more makes your doing more effective. Or you might find that effectiveness isn't the point, that the radiance of life Han talks about, it doesn't come from achievement, it comes from presence, from contemplation. From the beautiful uselessness of simply existing. This is not a self-help formula. There's no 5-step program to reclaim your humanity. This is a philosophical stance, a way of being in the world that resists the performance logic, a commitment to uselessness in a society that demands total utility. It's difficult. It's countercultural. It requires constant vigilance because the performance society is always trying to recapture spaces of freedom and convert them to productivity. But the alternative is what you're living now. Exhaustion, emptiness, the gnawing sense that you're doing everything right and somehow ending up with nothing that matters. Your useless hobby is not a distraction from your real life. It is your real life. The rest, the productivity, the performance, the optimization, that's the distraction. That's the thing that's been keeping you from actually living. The system will never give you permission to be useless. You have to claim it, not as indulgence, not as privilege, but as the essential human capacity without which all your achievement becomes meaningless. Life receives its radiance only from inactivity, not from what you produce, not from what you achieve, not from how well you perform, but from the contemplative capacity to simply be present to existence itself. Your useless salvation is not about doing less. It's about being more. Not about rejecting productivity, but about recognizing that productivity without presence is just exhaustion with achievements attached. So here's your choice. Continue performing until burnout, or start reclaiming uselessness as your birthright. The performance society is counting on you to choose performance. It needs you to keep optimizing, keep producing, keep extracting value from yourself until there's nothing left. But you don't have to. You can simply decide that some things, some time, some activities, some moments, they're not for sale, not for optimization, not for productivity, not for performance. They're just for being human, and being human is enough. So what will you do with this knowledge? Will you keep apologizing for your useless things? Or will you recognize them as the small spaces of freedom where you're still actually alive? I want to hear from you. What's the useless thing you love but feel guilty about? What hobby brings you joy precisely because it serves no purpose? Drop your answer in the comments below. Your confession might give someone else permission to reclaim their humanity. And if this philosophical rebellion spoke to you, if you felt seen in these ideas, subscribe to this channel. Because we're just getting started on understanding what it means to be human in an age that wants us to be machines. Don't stop here. The next video waiting for you explores another dimension of this crisis. Click on the recommended video to continue this journey into the depths of what makes life worth living. Remember, life receives its radiance only from inactivity. Don't let them steal your light.